All right, people, we're back with the second installment of our summer series. I'm joined by Luke of Luk Reviews, action aficionado, to go over the second in a series of returning movies from our favorite action franchise. We already went over John Wick Chapter 4. We've got Mission Impossible in about 2 months. But for now, Luke, we are here with the return of everyone's favorite Fast Family, the 10th official installment, sequential installment in the Fast and Furious saga, the 11th overall, if you include Hobbs and Shaw. Fast X in the title, and oh man, are they going for just some very obvious genre allusions right there? You got anything to say before we start this?
Not really. Just Fast X. I've been doing this all week.
Yeah, I've been doing that all like in a couple weeks leading up to it. All of that and more on today's episode of the Talking TV podcast. Oh Lord. Luke, oh man, look, I know you know that I love these grand gonzo action movies. I love it. I love my gigantic action sequences. I am all for them. But I'm sorry to say, and I can't believe that I'm starting off the podcast this way, I have been on the record saying that this is one of my absolute favorite franchises ever. I love the Fast and Furious movies. Like I said, it was for a couple of years straight. It was a tradition. It was a staple for me and my whole family to go and see the newest one of these movies in theaters, as they would just get bigger and more extravagant and crazier. So much so that I forced Chris to watch every single one of these movies for a first-time watch series that we did during COVID. And for the most part, he really enjoyed them. He really, really enjoyed all of them, even as they started to get sillier and sillier with the action sequences. And now, unfortunately, similar to where we got with Michael Bay's Transformers movies back in 2017 when he released The Last Night, I was like, okay, this has got to end. I think I've unfortunately reached my wit's end with this franchise. Like, it's too much. It's too much at this point. Like, I need to know your general thoughts on this going in, coming out before I can start to work through this, because this is unfortunately going to be, I think, another therapy session podcast for me.
I think most people would agree that F9 was not the great direction to go in. I don't know, how do you feel about 8 actually?
It's funny because when I watched 8 the first time, I had a blast with it, and then on repeated rewatches, it was just it was too obvious to me how they were cutting back and forth between The Rock and Vin Diesel, like the editing around them, because the two of them refused to be even in the same scene together, was like really apparent and kind of distracting and took me out of the movie. But I don't know. I feel like also at the same time, I may have been a little bit too harsh on 8 when it first came out.
No, I've always been a big fan of 8, but then 9 came out and I was like, something's not right. But it wasn't the stunts that was annoying me. It was everything in between. It was
right.
Again, like, oh my god, this device can hack everything in the world, and we gotta stop it. But there's a car, of course, so we gotta stop it with a car. But more so, I noticed like everyone's a superhero. Like,
yeah,
there's one scene where Dom like knocks a car so that Jacob can land on it.
I know what scene you're talking about.
There's like a spin, and he bounces on it, and he's completely fine. Or when Dom tackles Jacob off that bridge, not knowing that there was going to be the truck there.
Yeah.
Just things like that. But so that was a step down. So I was hoping that Fast X would be a bit of a course correction. Like up to like 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, it was always about doing everything bigger. Let's do something bigger. I feel like Fast X was trying to do something better. Like not necessarily bigger, just keep it to some similar level that 9 and 8 were at, but trying some different stunts or whatever.
And would you say that they did that?
I think so. There was nothing more car ridiculous than there was in 9, I think. The most ridiculous, I'd say, probably Dom playing Rocket League through the streets of Rome.
See, I thought that was just like car pinball is what I called that.
Also very, very accurate, but yeah, no, it was a very different movie to the previous movies. Someone compared to Infinity War.
A lot of
And I
people have been
think
comparing it to Infinity
it's a very
War.
good comparison, I think,
Yes,
with
yeah.
the amount of storylines and
Yeah.
character jumpings that are going on. But
well, storylines I'll give you. So I'm glad that you kicked that off with that, because I feel like that helps to bring some of my feelings a little bit to the table. So I think it was around 7 that my feelings in terms of like what I enjoyed about these movies started to shift, because I think up until 7, what they had was a really, really good balance between the group character dynamics. Like, you liked watching these characters, you liked spending time with these characters, even if they weren't the deepest. You liked watching Tyrese and Ludacris make jokes back and forth. You know, you liked Paul Walker, you liked Vin Diesel, even though he was really, really starting to become like grunting, and he was the source of all the memes, you know, all that. And you like spending time with these characters. And between 5 and 7, I would say that is the most successful stretch of the franchise, because they achieved the best equilibrium between you like these characters, you like spending time with these characters, and the stunts, which, like you said, their goal was to just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was about 7 that I feel like they petered out, when it's like, okay, they're driving cars out of planes and driving cars off
I don't see
cliffs,
anything wrong with the cars out of planes
and
thing.
driving
There's
cars
nothing wrong with
through
that.
multiple buildings. Like, don't get me wrong,
that one's a
I
bit
was
more.
with it. I'm not, listen, what you may hear coming out of my mouth are complaints. They're not. I am praising the franchise for them being able to pull that shit off in a somewhat believable sense. And like I said, in 8 was where, like I said, it was where the jokes started to become a bit much, like Roman, like Tyrese Gibson mugging, like really started to become irritating, and the studs, like, it just started to get to a level of unbelievability that I was almost like, okay, I don't care how unrealistic these get. You can't use cars to protect Vin Diesel from a nuclear explosion. Like, that's not how that works, you know? And so that's kind of where, and like I said, I'm attributing to the fact that I was so unbelievably high when I saw that 8th movie, that I was like, oh, this is spectacular. And 9, I have a really tricky relationship with 9, because 9 came out, it was June of 2021. We were still like somewhat coming out of COVID, but we still like had some good movies. But like, that was like the first like really like big movie that we got like in theaters that didn't go directly to streaming.
I think it was that and A Quiet Place too that I remember.
Yeah, it was those two. And so I watched both of them. And the thing with 9 is that was the first one where I'm like, okay, this is visibly stupid, but like, I still didn't really have a problem with it. Even with them shooting Tyrese and Ludacris into space, I'm like, I'm all for it. Like, they completely jumped the shark. Like, I don't care. This is friggin' dumb. The only thing that the memes keep getting wrong is they keep saying that, like, the dude who, like, catches the car while on top of the other car is Dom. It's not. It's one of the henchmen that actually, like, gets killed. So the memes got to keep correcting that, because they're still going based off the trailers. But I still am of the opinion that 9, my only real problematic part, aside from the flashbacks, which are actually awful, and like they look like from a CW cartoon.
Like Fast and Furious babies.
Exactly. Like, I don't hate 9. Like, it's not good, and it's arguably one of the weaker ones in the franchise, but I still enjoy it. My thing with this one, if we're going to pivot into this one, and kind of the reason why I'm having such a hard time, is because I think this is the first time where I'm not having fun with the characters. You know, I'm really not. Like you said, this is the Infinity War of the saga. So there's a lot of characters. They've got too many characters in this franchise, between both the characters
they're going to have even more in the next one.
Between the characters that they've added in the last couple of movies, over the course of the last couple of movies, the new characters that they add in this movie. Look, we've got a max of 3 or 4 new cast members, and they're all like taking center stage. Jason Momoa is the villain, Brie Larson, Alan Ritson, and Daniela Melchior, right? Although you have those 4, all of them play a pretty substantial part, on top of the characters that they bring it back that you thought were gone from this franchise. So in terms of like them trying to bring together like every single cast member that they've had from the last couple of movies, really since 5. I mean, they kind of been doing that over the last couple of movies, but this one was like where they really cemented it. They're like, okay, like, we're good. This is kind of our staple now. And I'm like, okay, I got that. But it's like the fact that the characters get split up. Not all the storylines are kind of interesting. The cutting back and forth like gets really, really like because you're going from Vin Diesel, it's another Fast and Furious movie where Vin Diesel's by himself for a majority of the movie. And I'm realizing now that because it's very similar to what happened in 8, where for a majority of 8, Vin Diesel's with Charlize Theron for most of that movie, and he's not with the rest of the family. When Vin Diesel is separated from the rest of the family, I'm not a fan of it, because Vin Diesel in these movies is not an interesting enough persona to carry it, you know? And it leaves it up to Jason Momoa and his mugging to do all the legwork. And well, I'll get to Momoa in a bit, because I've got a lot of stuff that I want to say about him as the latest villain. So you, like I said, you got the family split up all over the place. You've got the fact that the individual storylines are so totally different. Like these movies have gotten to a point now where tone does not even matter, really. Like, again, you go from like cracking a joke 1 second to like being in these supposedly life-threatening scenarios in another minute, and to like having the most over-dramatic like tension ever. Like so much so that it's like, oh my God, it's just sexual attention. You guys just gotta get in the room. Like Charlize Theron, when she shows up in this movie, and her and Vin Diesel scene is one of the funniest things I have ever seen. And I don't even know if they're ironically funny anymore. Like, it's just funny to watch. Like every time Vin Diesel is trying to get so serious, and I don't know if he's in it on the joke or not, or if he just still thinks that this is like quality acting. But I'm like, this is barely soap opera good. You know, it's barely on that level. And to have all of that, and I think the final reason is that like the action is just like, it's kind of dull to me now. And I never thought I would hear myself say that about a Fast and Furious movie. But like you said, Dom playing human pinball with his car, and it can just take a million hits and still drive, and it's still drivable, like with a gigantic like pinball sized bomb, which lights itself on fire and somehow doesn't detonate. You know, you've got friggin', oh my God, what else? You've got him driving off a dam and outrunning an explosion. You've got John Cena driving a car with cannons attached to it. Like, I can't explain it. Like, it's no dumber than anything else that these movies have done. But I don't know. I feel like they may have jumped the shark by sending Tyrese and Ludacris into space in the last one with the actual rocket car. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like just from an action, Luke, as the resident action fiend in for the podcast, like, I feel like this movie was kind of lacking, not from an action standpoint, but from a creative action standpoint. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I guess it comes to a point where what more can you do with a car?
Right.
Hasn't been done in these movies. Like they're running out of things for them to crash into or fly from. Like cannon car, we haven't had that yet. But I don't know. For me, it's like you put a car in an action scene, and I'll eat it up anyway. But it felt a little more low key. Like they
Right.
like they tried to go a bit too bombastic with the last one, with that big armadillo truck.
Yes.
So they maybe just try to limit it to like one car doing one thing, and maybe you have two helicopters that are being dragged behind it when it jumped off and tackled them to the ground or whatever. I don't know. I guess.
Well, I think you're exactly right there. I think you're exactly right. Where they took a look at or supposedly Vin Diesel in all of his wisdom, because we know that he's the reason why these movies happen, looked at the last couple of movies. It was like, these have become a little bit too, like, people are only kind of showing up to see like what is the latest stupid stunt that we're going to pull off. I want to pull it back. I want to make it more about the family. I want to make it more about the characters. So now, as is recently revealed, this movie, which was originally supposed to be part one of a two-parter, is now part one of a three-parter. And I'll get to that because I have my theories as to where this is going to go. So Vin Diesel took a look back and it's like, okay, we got to get this, like, we actually have to have these characters doing something that's not just like in a car action stunt wise, you know? And so that results in the decision to, in one of the latest in a long series of series retcons, you know, like they've been doing this for a while now. They started in the last one with John Cena and inserting him in. And now you have it in this one where Jason Momoa is playing Dante Reyes, who is the son of Hernan Reyes, where you could say, like I said, which is where this whole phase of Fast movie started with who was the villain that they faced off in Portugal in the fifth one. And
in Brazil.
And
in Rio, Brazil.
In Rio, exactly.
I will say I really enjoyed seeing Fast 5 on a big screen.
Yes, that was cool again.
My first Fast movie on big screen.
Retcons to Fast
my first
5.
Fast movie on the big screen was 7. So
yeah,
not having seen 5.
Yeah, that was very cool. 5 was my first one on the big screen, and that was
a reminder of better days.
Yeah,
for this
so
franchise.
much better days. Exactly. Like the way that the movie opens, like with the, like, they do that thing where it's like, again, you're essentially watching moments from 5 already, but like with digitally or reshot inserted scenes in order to retcon it. And for a second, I thought, I'm like, oh wait, like this is giving us flashbacks. Like this is actually going to be like pretty good for a second. And then Jason Momoa comes in, and Jason Momoa is a guy who I feel like, again, is another actor that Hollywood is just not known how to use properly, where, again, he's clearly got the looks of everything that they want. Like, one of the first instances where you saw him, like, breaking out was the Conan the Barbarian remake in 2011, which I heard was not good. And he, you know, the same year that he played Khal Drogo on Game of Thrones. And I feel like the problem with Momoa is they've never found a way to really mix his really brutish looks with his kind of more goofy interior. Like, he's a goofy guy and he wants to have fun. And I feel like, again, it's like, they cast him as Aquaman and they cast him as Duncan Idaho in Dune. And again, these really beefy, somewhat serious parts, but he's kind of just a goofball and he kind of wants to just have fun every time you watch him in interviews and stuff. Like, he's always
There's
like,
a scene in Dune in the book where Duncan Idaho is quite drunk. We could have seen that. That would have been good,
and they cut that for the movie, like that would, like, in that sense, I'm like, yeah, I understand why they are trying to cast Momoa in this one. And we all know that when it comes to these movies,
he's
like,
gonna be in the Minecraft movie though.
Yeah, that too. And what's it called? When you cast Jason Momoa in these movies, when you cast anybody in these movies, their goal is just ham it up as humanly possible. Unless it's Statham, who just does his own thing completely, like The Rock, hamming it up. Charlize, hamming it up. John Cena, I still can't really explain what the goal with that last one was, But this one, he's being a little bit more goofy now that he's back with them, and he's on the team. The Russian guy in the last one who's revealed to be like the real bad guy or whatever. Like, he was hamming it up. And now you have Momoa, and good God, was he born to play the role of Dante Reyes, because he is somebody who I think is like a combination between, I think the best way that I can describe his character, Dante, is a combination between the Joker and, I don't know if you ever saw the movie 12 Rounds with John Cena, but the villain that Aidan Gillen, aka Littlefinger, plays in that movie, who is like kind of like this mastermind who has these elaborate setups to entrap people with bombs and countdown, like and Saw. He's a mix between like Joker and Saw, basically, where his mission after he was knocked off the bridge by the safe with Dom, who, and after his father died, his goal is to cause the Fast family as much suffering as possible. So he essentially lures them into a series of elaborately planned settings. Like, first he tricks the team into undergoing a bogus mission in Rome. Then he lures Dom to Rio and sticks bombs under the cars of some people as he challenges them to a street race. Then he steals, Then he steals God's Eye and he goes after Dom's son. And then it's revealed it's basically, it's another one of those situations where it's like somebody is essentially out Dom, where they're like, there's no killing this guy, and every single chance you get, like, he's always going to be one step ahead of the curve, and he's deliciously chewing on every single scene that he's in. Like I said, we have another performance to add to my overacting Hall of Fame, because good God, he is just mugging the shit out of every single scene, where he's at one part's like being a playboy, being a fanboy, where he's like, ooh, Dom, like, I'm such a fan, and like he's hamming it up and has the most ridiculous looking outfits, and like you can't, every time you think this guy's down for the count, he comes back and he's like, oh no, you thought I was out. And like, I don't know, like, he was really enjoyable and really fun to watch, and kind of like low-key saved the movie. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that, because I feel like of everything that I've seen him in, he's always like, yeah, he was there, he was good, like, I liked him in Dune, but he was like part of like such a really well utilized ensemble that Denis Villeneuve can do no wrong. And Aquaman, I always thought he was just okay, and I liked him in the Snyder Cut because the Snyder Cut was good, but I always thought his casting was like kind of weird, and I like I said, and obviously I like him in Game of Thrones, but he's in such a small part of that you're like, okay, I never really knew how to feel about him as an actor, and I feel like here it's like he's kind of found his groove in a weird way.
Yeah, I think the comparison I made was when The Rock came into the franchise. He added some of that necessary flair, and I think the same way Jason Momoa does that, and it's a very different flair to what we've seen before. Yes. He's just a maniac. You can't set him off anywhere, or he just doesn't care. You can hit his car. I don't remember how they best him in this movie. They really don't.
They don't. That's the thing. They don't, because that
no matter
gets
what you throw at him,
that gets to the cliffhanger. Yeah, they every time they best him, he always like bounces back with a vengeance. Like there is just no stopping him.
And I think if he is like the final boss of the Fast saga, I think it's a worthy one. How they can get it to 3 movies, we'll see. Maybe he'll join the family.
Well,
maybe there'll be a
like
third.
Said,
maybe a third final boss.
We know the trajectory of all of these villains. They always join. The Rock Statham, now Charlize in this movie, which that's a spoiler for like every single villain joins the family always. You know, that's how it always works in there. And these guys commit some heinous acts too, like some absolutely heinous acts. Like I understand the Statham thing where it's like, okay, they faked Han's death because he was working with the Mr. Nobody character, the Kurt Russell character. So in terms of Jason Statham not actually being a bad guy, even though he was hunting them down and trying to murder them all, you know, that at least made sense. You know, The Rock, yeah, he was just a law enforcement agency that was following them under false pretenses. The Charlize thing I'm still a little bit confused by because Charlize is like, yeah, the Charlize killed Elena, you know, Dom's baby mom. So I still don't know how I feel about her treatment in this movie.
Maybe she's alive too.
She's alive too, yeah. so like that essentially like brings us into kind of like I said, the cognitive dissonance that comes from just like the jarring change in tones, because essentially what we get in this movie is we're getting like 4 to 5 different plot lines on a given movie where you got Vin Diesel, who, like I said, is by himself for a majority of this movie, who is like trying to track down Jason Momoa, and he's having the run-ins with Brie Larson and Alan Ritchson's characters and Danielle Melchior's character. He's essentially shepherding in the new characters in the franchise. Then you have the team who are kind of off on their own, just like going from cameo to cameo, you know, Ludacris, Tyrese, Ramsey.
A very delightful cameo, I should say.
And first they run into Pete Davidson, who's just like, just basically just like a waste of 15, 20 minutes just to like get Han and Roman to fight each other for like idiots. And then they go to see Jason Statham, and then he's kind of there to give them weapons and then just leaves. You know, it's kind of weird. Like,
I'll see you in the next movie.
And in terms of the parts of this movie that are setting up for future movies, you got Michelle Rodriguez, who was essentially trying to pull off a prison break drama with Charlize, where they're in a secret offsite.
I kind of forgot about them.
In Antarctica.
They were the ones I forgot about.
It's that one and the next one I'm about to say that you kind of forget about, where they kind of keep popping up, where it's like they're like, okay, like Michelle Rodriguez has been kind of attached to the hip and Dom for the last couple of movies, so I feel like this is continuing off a trend that they do for the last one, where they try to like give her some of her own like spare time, you know. Because Michelle Rodriguez has been playing second fiddle to male action stars for so long that they want to like probably give her like some solo one-off time, and this is the best that they can do. And then you have probably like the weirdest, which is John Cena, where they essentially
that was my favorite one.
Their way of
like a road trip movie
is having him essentially babysit Dom's son, and they're essentially just going on a spy road trip movie where whenever they come back to those two, it essentially becomes Spy Kids, and like literally like right with the plane. It literally becomes like Spy Kids where they're like flying. And I'm like, okay, like this is dumb. And so, but it's jumping around so often, and the tone is changing so often that like I could never get like a firm grasp of like of like what I'm supposed to be enjoying. I'm like, okay, so this is going from like a crazy like conspiracy movie to like a buddy road movie to like a prison escape movie. Like there's every kind of genre in this movie. Like they really did have everything. And so in terms of the comparisons to Infinity War, like I get it, where the whole point of that movie was all the characters got split up, so you're following all these different storylines with all these different characters. The difference is that like Infinity War actually if you told me that Infinity War was just one movie, I would believe you, because it ends in a way that even though it is a cliffhanger, it still offers a resolution. This movie does not offer a resolution in any way.
They're just standing there.
It cuts away. You have it in the middle of an action sequence, and it cuts away, and then you have 2 cameos, and then it ends. It doesn't even tell you that it's part 1. Like at the very least, Dune tells you that it's Dune Part 1 in the trailer, so that in the titles, that way when it ends, you at least have the expectation, oh no, okay, this is just part of the story. Here, like would you even know that this is a part where like I don't know like how like a regular casual audience member feeling, if there even are regular casual people who watch these movies anymore, would feel watching this movie where you have Vin Diesel.
Maybe that's part of it.
Maybe,
like the pure shock of it.
Or where you have Vin Diesel protecting his son from a dam that is about to explode and cover them in rubble. And it would not surprise me at all if in the next one you have just like a sea of rubble and Vin Diesel's hand just punches its way through like the freaking Hulk, you know? And then it cuts to Antarctica with Charlize and Michelle trekking across miles of Antarctic land to a submarine that pops up out of nowhere with the latest of the Fast family that's come back from the dead. We'll cover that in a bit, but Joe Chiarulli owes me $20 because I called this 2 years ago in F9, and I don't think it's a surprise at this point, but I did want to point out that in the Wikipedia page, when it was revealed that this certain cast member was back, there's 2 returning cast members in this movie that nobody thought that they would get back. It says a very much what's it called? This person plays a very much alive version of this character, which I thought was just hilarious. I'm like, wow, even the Wikipedia writers are in on what a joke this franchise is in. So Luke, what did you think of the whole like the bouncing across like different storylines? Like, was it as jarring for you as it was for me?
Maybe not as jarring, but more so just like maybe the right word is jarring. Just like you're in one scene, it's like
Right.
Dom in Brazil. It's a super intense like the racing scene where he has to choose which one to save, and then it's like, oh, Pete Davidson,
Right.
you want to try my muffins, bro?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, which
and
are
then
obviously acid laced, which there's like a quick scene of that, and then they just like go away from it. And I'm like, I don't know. I kind of would
yeah,
have liked to see Han like trying to fumble his way through the rest of the movie while tripping
and
balls
then
on acid. That would have been
and
funny.
then John Cena's watching the Minions on the plane, um, and then there's just a fight in Antarctica. So yeah, it's a lot.
You look like you're having a hard time trying to remember what happens in each scene.
It's a very big movie, and I guess that aspect of it made me feel like, oh wow, this is kind of long, you know.
Yeah.
Like
2 hours and 21 minutes, and does it utilize every single minute of it.
I mean nowadays that's like pretty standard for a blockbuster, but even then it felt a little long. But I still enjoyed it a lot. As you can might have been able to tell by my story reaction saying we are so back.
Yeah,
Because
I don't know. Like it wasn't that I was like excited going into this, but like kind of the knowledge that this was kind of the end, because the problem with this franchise is that they had 2 points where they were clearly planning on ending it, right? They had 5, which was kind of like their last legs, their last vestiges in terms of like, okay, like we can't really keep this going because, like I said, the movies up until that point hadn't really been the success that they wanted, because 1, you have the whole group together. Then 2 is this weird like spin-off with just Paul Walker's character. Then 3 is essentially a reboot with a whole new cast. And then 4, they try their hand and try and get everybody back together. The only kind of connecting tissue at that point is Justin Lin. But they get kind of the whole crew back for 4. And then 5, they really blow it up and they're like, no, we're turning this into like a serious action movie. And 5 is a major success. So they do 6 and 7. 7 after Paul Walker's death is clearly intended to be the end point. But then 7 ends up being such a massive success that they feel like they have no
fourth
choice
highest
to keep
grossing
going.
of all time. Actually.
Exactly. I think 8 might have actually come close to it as well. And so you have all of these different things that have happened since then. And, you have 8, you have the spinoff, you have 9 after COVID. And now it's like to a point where it's like this franchise has been going on for 20 years now. And like, they kind of have a feeling where they're like, yeah, we probably should end it. But like, how do we milk this for as much as we possibly can before we end it? And the idea was,
I think it's going to keep going with their kids,
well,
a little big.
Hold that thought. Hold that thought, because that's another long-running theory that I've had about these. I hate it because this is one franchise where every single thing that I predict about it ends up becoming true. And I'm like, oh, and I'm just like, okay, so where what's it called? Where you have like this was originally supposed to be part 1 of a planned 2-part finale. Now it's revealed that it's going to be part 1 of a 3-part finale. Vin Diesel has talked about the fact that he wants Robert Downey Jr. in these movies, which it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up getting it, because basically Fast and Furious just picks up every like leftover from a franchise, like the
I'm pretty sure they asked Dave Bautista and he said no.
And Dave Bautista was like, fuck no, absolutely not. Because he's like, that's the last thing that I need for my career. Because then they would have had the trifecta. They would have had The Rock, Cena, and Batista in the movies. The trifecta of wrestlers turned actors. And so you have that. You have the fact that again, like these movies have really kind of built themselves like into the pop culture lexicon. Like when you think of the Fast and Furious movies, like they really like aside from your Marvels, your DCs, your Jurassic Parks. When you think of your big franchises, like this has become like one of the cemented staples of action movie storytelling over the last couple of years, specifically over the last decade. So it's kind of almost become too big to fail at this point. And in terms of them just kind of playing fast and loose with like logic and laws of physics, that's kind of become an expected thing from these movies. Like you don't go into these movies expecting to be surprised anymore. It's almost kind of like very similar to Mission Impossible, where you don't go into these movies expecting to be surprised by the fact that Tom Cruise is going to do something ludicrous that like defies the laws of gravity. Like you go in expecting it. And so I feel like in a way, like they've almost gotten to the point where them trying to play against expectations and have a little bit more plot, quote unquote, is where they kind of like start to like fall short in a way, and I think that's kind of where I'm like running into a wall in terms of my enjoyment, because like I said, they have the ambiguous ending, which I hate. I'm sorry. I am of the opinion, get rid of parts 1s and 2s of movies. I hate it. It doesn't work. It wrecks Harry Potter for me in hindsight. I know everybody loves Dune, and I do like Dune, but I'm not a fan of how they ended it, and I still like make the whole 4.5 hour long movie. We would have watched it. What's it called? I don't like when they do part 1 and 2s of movies. The only one where it worked was Infinity War and Endgame, because they make those movies like feel like their own individual movies, you know, as part of the greater overall Marvel thing. What's it called? So it's that. It's the ping-ponging around of storylines that it just becomes too inconsistent and too jarring every time it cuts away for me for a while. And the fact that from a soap opera standpoint, like I said, these characters are at their worst. It's Vin Diesel at his gruntiest. Tyrese is like struggling with the joke.
I felt that one. They're kind of milking that
painful.
one very dry.
It was becoming really, really painful. Like with the golden Lamborghini and with the money strapped to his body, I'm like, we get it. This is tiresome at this point, you know? Like Charlize had become like kind of a welcome source of like comedy in terms of like how serious she was taking it. John Cena is like kind of like went from like being like somewhat serious in the last one to being like the fun, goofy uncle. Clearly, like his work with James Gunn over the last couple of years has clearly been paying off, and he's been utilizing that. Michelle Rodriguez is just bad in these movies now. I'm sorry. I can't say that I was necessarily a fan of when they brought her back to begin with, you know, but like she at least had something to do when like she thought that Dom was evil in 8, you know, and now it's like, yeah, she's just like kind of mean mugging, and I'm not a fan of her in these movies now at all. And then, like I said, you have the obligatory action cameos, you know, like you have Jason Statham who's in it for a scene and then leaves. You have Helen Mirren who's in it for a scene and leaves. They cut Cardi B from this movie, which is still hilarious to me that Vin Diesel knows everybody, including Cardi B. But that brings us into the new character. So we talked a little bit about Jason Momoa. So you have 3 other, like I said, mainstream additions who, again, just the familial connections just keep going, where you have Alan Ritchson, who is the new leader of the agency in place of Kurt Russell, who's just disappeared. Kurt Russell's essentially like the Nick Fury of these movies now, where he kind of just fucks off for a couple movies until he randomly comes back in like a TV show offshoot or something, you know? Like they never said that John Cena killed him in the last one, and for the longest time I thought that he had. But no, it turns out he's just disappeared off the grid and led way for Alan Ritchson, who is supposed to be like the more... I'm trying to think of the best way to compare. I guess it's supposed to be more so like the General Ross to Nick Fury, where he's less sympathetic towards Vin Diesel's family, and he wants to like arrest them, and he believes them until he doesn't, and then it's revealed inevitably at the end that he's working with Jason Momoa in the most predictable twist of all time. Like every time you have like a more hard-ass leaning leader of a secret agency, I'm like, okay, so he's clearly going to be.
Yeah, I was like, what's this guy's motivation? Like, what is he really up to?
Yeah,
and then he's like, oh,
it's the most predictable. I called about like 5 minutes into seeing his character when he was interacting with Brie Larson in that one scene that was so obviously trying to mimic the Winter Soldier. I'm like, okay, he's the bad guy. He's going to be working with Momoa. You know, like it wasn't even hard to predict at all, and it just took the fun out of it. You have Brie Larson, who is collecting the biggest paycheck for doing the littlest work possible, which I feel like is just going to define her career going forward as Kurt Russell's daughter. And you have, again, possibly my favorite of the new up-and-coming actors, who, again, it's weird also how many actors these movies are pulling from James Gunn, where first John Cena, now you have Daniela Melchior, who also popped up in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 as...
She's part of the family immediately.
She's actually part of the family, where she's revealed to be the sister of Elena Naves, the mother of Dom's child, played by Chris Hemsworth's real-life wife, Elsa Pataki, who Charlize Theron murdered in the last one, who basically is in the Rio street racing scene, who Dom saves from Jason Momoa, at least for a little bit, twice. And then she ends up like taking care of Brie Larson when she magically gets shot by Jason Momoa. So you like I said, you have all of these different pieces that are just coming together in order to try and lock in. Like, I don't know. I think that unlike Infinity War, the biggest difference is that a very inconsistent screen time between all of the characters. Like very, very inconsistent screen time. Like weirdly enough, I think that outside of Vin Diesel and Jason Momoa, I think that like none of these characters have a whole lot of screen time. Like you have Jordana Brewster, who's in the beginning opening like family barbecue scene, but without her son or Brian. Still no explanation as to how like, oh, so Paul Walker is dead, but is still alive in the universe of these movies. Really inconsistent there. And then like, and they still haven't confirmed like if that was supposed to be Paul Walker or John Cena that pulled up in the car at the end of 9. And before they just cut.
No, that was definitely Paul Walker. That was his skyline.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then so Paul Walker it's so weird how they're working around Paul Walker being alive in these movies but dead in real life. And so you have Jordana Brewster in the opening scene, and then she's just there to like help John Cena protect Dom's son against the invading people, and then she just goes off to Warren Bryant and then isn't in the rest of the movie, you know? And so like it's really it's very inconsistent how they're using all these characters. Every time they cut to Tyrese, Ludacris, Ramsey, and Han, it's like why are we even watching this? Because the way that storyline even ends up ending, it's like what was the point of following this around? Where their literal point is they're after they get framed in Rome and they all go undercover with the help of Helen Mirren's character, they're kind of like going around London, just like running into cameo after cameo. They have one fun action sequence with Jason Statham. They get a plane, and then they go to meet up with Dom, and then they get shot down by Alan Ritson. By the way, none of those guys are dead. I'm sorry.
No.
And no, none of those guys are going to die. Like, I'm sorry. These people have survived.
I hope John Cena isn't dead. I think he might be, but that's a shame.
I think he's dead. Like, you saw the way that like he like did the Jesus pose when his car got flipped.
But it was a rocket jump, so it
was a rocket jump, and he was grabbing the cross. Also, most pointless sacrifice ever.
Yeah.
Like, can we just talk about that? Like, it didn't actually
accomplish anything. And Kong Skull Island.
Exactly. Like which is ironically another character that's been in these movies, Shea Wiggum. But yeah, I'm just like, I was kind of to the point where I'm like, what is the point of this movie other than it's another movie that's just setting us up for what will hopefully be better movies? But again, if the next couple of movies are just going to be more like inane action sequences, like I said it themselves, I'm like, the fact that they were not driving cars on the moon with velociraptors with laser guns coming out of them, like I was waiting for that crossover, and the fact that they have not given me that, I'm like, what's really even the point of these movies? So, of the new additions, besides Jason Momoa, who obviously I think it's safe to say is everyone's favorite, who is your favorite of the new members of the family and new additions? Before we get into we're going to end this conversation with the return cameos at the end and how we feel about those.
I do want to talk about my personal favorite scene in the film, and it's the first time that we see Alan Richardson and Brie Larson. And they're in the presentation room.
No words to explain
and somehow
that scene.
They have footage from every movie.
Well, they're a super secret agency. I would expect that. That in a weird way, by movie logic at least, was the most believable thing.
I don't know. They have like all the footage. They have footage of the cars falling out of the planes. They have that one shot from the fourth movie where it's them at like right before they do the final action sequence before in the sunset. Like there was no camera there or anything. and then Dom has that picture on his like wall. Like who took that picture?
Of like all of the different movies. And I'm like, wow, we're really rubbing it in. It's like, wow, look at how much we've done.
They have footage from the submarine thing.
You do this once every fucking movie. You have a reminiscence about all the crazy shit that you guys have done in the past. We get it.
But there are some great lines where they kind of acknowledge the jokes that the franchise has come to know, and like Alan Richardson goes like, they corrupt law enforcement. Everyone becomes part of the family. He puts Elsa Pataki, Dwayne Johnson, and someone else.
Yeah, Dwayne Johnson, Paul Walker, Kurt Russell. That had me laughing. That was funny.
That was a very enjoyable scene. Like, okay, you're finally fully acknowledging the Twitter jokes.
But here's the problem with that. I feel like they already did that in the last one when Tyrese gets shot like 30,000 times and doesn't have a scratch on him. You know, I feel like
that was one part of it, that they can survive anything. This was one where like every time this happens, that happens. But whatever.
I still think that my personal favorite line was in the trailer, which was actually again one of Momoa's infamous lines where he's like, "Oh, what are we blowing up today? Oh, the Vatican? Okay, but you guys are going to hell." That was funny.
I very much enjoyed that. He's just
funny.
Putting words in their mouths and like pretending.
That was crazy. We didn't have a whole scene where he's just having a full-on conversation with two corpses, and I'm like, "What the hell? Like, this is nuts."
I enjoyed all the newcomers. Probably Brie Larson the most because it's Brie Larson.
Brie Larson, I was like, Danielle Melchior was my favorite for sure.
I think she was maybe a bit too sappy. Like, ooh, I'm sad. Alan Richardson was just from what I've seen of Jack Reacher. I've seen some clips of Jack Reacher on TikTok. I haven't watched the show, but what I've seen, it's just that again. Like, there's a scene in Rio where he's like going after Dom, where a bunch of guys rock up. He's like, "Hey, I like your watch," and he beats them up. Like, gonna need a new watch or something. Yeah, that was just like straight out of Jack Reacher. But he's the most tanned man I've ever seen. Yeah. But I enjoyed the newcomers for the most part. I didn't have any particularly strong feelings, positive or negative. I wonder who we'll get in the next one.
Yeah, right. I was about to say, they keep adding people. And like I said, that brings us to the fact that nobody really truly dies, except for unless, like I said, John Cena, who they needed out of this movie. They needed room for him, and they needed to give like Dom further motivation for the next couple. But what's it called? Where again, nobody dies or stays dead in these movies. Where the first at the end, where and I called it, Joey Chiruli owes me $20 because I called it 2 years ago. I'm like, they're bringing Han back. They're bringing Gal Gadot back. Everything in DC is falling apart. It was the perfect time. We're at the end. You have Charlize and Michelle Rodriguez, and they're going towards it. And a submarine pops up out of the ice out of nowhere, and out comes Gal Gadot. She's back.
She was there the whole time.
She's there the whole time, and I can't wait until the next one where they have a magical explanation as to how. But like I'm like, okay, so them faking Han's death in Tokyo Drift. That makes sense, at least the way that they explained it. I can't wait to see what ludicrous explanation they have to say that Gal Gadot survived jumping off of a car into the darkness. I just like
I will say this: Owen Shaw survived, and he got out of that plane too.
And I said this from the beginning. I said this from 6 onward. I'm like, no body, no crime, no death. We never saw her body, so they were just making assumptions back then, I guess.
It's going to be an even bigger ensemble if they bring
exactly.
Back we don't know what solo mission Statham is
I'm still waiting for Leon. I'm still waiting for Leon from the first one, who was the only member of the family that we haven't seen since. So I'm waiting for Devin Aoki. I'm waiting for Suki from Too Fast, Too Furious. I want the Tokyo Drift guys back, which granted they were back in the last one. I want those guys back. I want John Ortiz back, even though he's in jail. I want him back in the family. I want Shea Wiggum back. I want all of them. Give me everybody. Give me Cardi B. Fuck it. I don't care. Bring everybody back. If you're gonna do this, like we gotta have like if this was our Infinity War, right?
Mad Max Fury Road.
Exactly. We gotta have an Endgame style of just an army of cars just going at each other. One side is Vin Diesel, one side is Jason Momoa, and it's everyone. We gotta bring back the CG Paul Walker. That's gonna happen at this point. I'm fully confident that they will do it at this point.
I hope it doesn't, but
they're going to do it. And we just need all the cars to just be smashing on top of each other, like Endgame style. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. We need that to happen, you know? And Vin Diesel's just like bouncing from car to car to car to try and get to Momoa's Thanos character. You know, like that. This is where we're at with this franchise. This is what's going to happen. And that brings us to, like I said, this is really how you know they're in their MCU phase. We have a post-credit scene in this movie where famously, after years of Vin Diesel trying to get him back, and him trying to get The Rock back, we got him back. The post-credit scene where you have an army of soldiers going in to Jason Momoa's compound, super secret compound, in the remains of the bank in Rio, and it's revealed you get a phone call. It's like Luke Hobbs. It's like, Dom may have been the one that knocked my dad, but you're the one who pulled the trigger. So and it's revealed that The Rock's back. So this actually leads to a theory of mine, and I want to know what your thoughts are. Where my theory is that we don't see Vin Diesel or much of Vin Diesel or the Fast family in the next one, where they're going to leave that ambiguous as to whether they survived, even though we all know they survived. And the next movie is going to be a majority. It's going to be The Rock, and then and Jason Statham, and 11 is going to be Hobbs and Shaw 2. Exactly. And with occasional cut-ins from Michelle Rodriguez, Gal Gadot, and Charlize Theron. And then 12 is, and it's going to be them going up against Jason Momoa. And then 12 is going to be everybody coming together. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if they do that. Like a whole movie where Dom isn't like a primary part of it. I don't know if they do that, but that does sound incredible.
Feasible, you know, because Hobbs and Shaw, the way that movie left off, it did feel like kind of that, you know, that there was a little bit. I mean, I wasn't the biggest fan of Hobbs and Shaw because it didn't feel like a Fast and Furious movie. It just felt like kind of a generic action movie.
Maybe that was part of it. It's a spin-off. It's not really.
But I'm like, in terms of like actually making like because again, they clearly have wanted The Rock back. They understand that they struck magic with him, and they understand that like losing him, Vin Diesel clearly understands that losing him was a mistake, even though The Rock had his reasons for it, you know. And Vin Diesel's been openly admitting that he's been wanting The Rock back for a while. He tried to get him back for 9, you know, and before The Rock turned him down. But then we may know the real reason for that, because The Rock was trying to get Black Adam off, and then when the shift to DC happened and he kind of realized that he had been used, he now came back. So now he came back to the franchise. So like I said, man, everybody's back. Like nobody ever died. Once they're a part of the family, like nobody ever dies. That I famously made the joke. I'm like, yeah, Goonies never say die. Well, in this franchise, nobody ever actually fucking dies, you know, unless you're John Cena or in the first couple. Like we still don't have Laz Alonso back for the fourth one. He hasn't died yet. You know, Hernan Reyes, He's supposedly dead. Oh, but wait, we got Owen Shaw. He survived. You know, I'm expecting him to come back at some point. You know, like I said, everybody's going to be back. Michael Rooker from the last one as like, you know, I'm still expecting Vin Diesel and John Cena's dad to magically come back from the dead. You know, like I said, all bets are off as far as this one goes. So before we wrap up and get out of here, final thoughts, star rating of this one, and then where you would rank it within the franchise.
I had a good time with it. That's mostly all I want to be better than 9, bit more course correction, and that's what I got out of it. At least I had a good time with it. Cool stunts, fun characters like Jason Momoa, and I am definitely pumped for the next 2, next 4, next 5, however many you want.
However many. Next thing you know, oh, there's one more. Oh, there's one more.
This one's not
like you said. I'm fully expecting that at the end of the next one. We're gonna have like a whole generation of kids. You're gonna, like I said, it's Dom's kid, it's Brian's kid. They're gonna be leaving. What is it? Jack and Jack and Little B. You're gonna have Hobbs' daughter in there. Han and Giselle will probably have a kid. She's gonna be in there.
You got Dom's second kid.
Dom's second kid, exactly. All of them are gonna be in there. You know.
What else? But this one's not doing so amazingly financially.
Really?
I've heard.
Really?
That it's like one of the lower.
Yeah, Guardians 3 still cleaning up box office wise.
But even for Fast and Furious, a lower end opening is still quite something. But
they can't chalk this one up to COVID like they did the last one.
These movies cost a lot. So
these movies cost a lot of money, like a lot of money.
So my star rating is, I haven't rewatched them all recently. I rewatched 5 and onwards recently, but it sits. Let me just pull it up. It sits at number 5 for me currently, right above Tokyo Drift.
Got it. Yeah, for me, like I said, Chris and I rewatched rewatched, and then Chris watched for the first time all the Fast and Furious movies 2 years ago when we were building up to 9. So I didn't feel the need to do that again for this one. But I think that it's weird because I think I'm going to give this one the lowest star rating that I've given them, because I think I gave 9 still a 3.5 for my overall enjoyment. But I think this is my least favorite one, only because, like I said, it's too inconsistent. It's too jarring all over the place. The enjoyable parts are not enough to make up for the lackluster ones. And like I said, it's the first time where I feel like the magic of this franchise is just completely lost. So while I'm still giving it a 3 overall, 3 out of 5 stars for enjoyment entirely, because like I said, I had a fun time watching this, like just basking in the stupidity of it. It's still, I think this is my least favorite one of the franchise for sure. And like, I gotta say, everybody's saying that this is the best one in years. I personally, I don't get that one at all. But that's also because in my mind, none of these movies have really been that great since 7. Like 7 was the ultimate peak. And now I think we're in a valley. So now hopefully that means that these movies will have nowhere to go but up. But at the same time, I'm not holding my breath. 2 more, 3 more. Like, these movies are never going to end. I had fun watching Jason Momoa. It was cool seeing all the new cast members. It was somewhat cool seeing all the connective tissue. But overall, just a very inconsistent and messy experience just for what's supposed to be like a big, fun, dumb action movie. So, Luke, I wanted to thank you for coming on once again.
I do want to mention something.
Yeah.
Dom,
yes,
do you know what is currently going on in Hollywood right now?
The writer's strike, yes.
Exactly. Can Fast X Part 2 be a writer's strike movie?
Ooh, okay.
Will it be better or worse?
I think you're being generous, assuming that these movies have scripts to begin with, because from what I understood, the reason why Justin Lin, who was originally supposed to direct this movie before he walked off and said, nah, this is too much for me, is the fact that Vin Diesel pretty much just comes up with different action sequences on the day and pitches them and has the director shoot them and then has the writers like do stuff in between, So I think assuming that these movies have cohesive scripts is being generous to begin with. But the last time, like I said, we got some writer's strike movies. We got Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. So fingers crossed. Who knows? Maybe the next Fast and Furious movie will be written by ChatGPT. Who knows? We have no idea ultimately what could happen. But Luke, thank you for joining me on the next installment of our summer series. We're going to be taking another break next week. We will not be doing Little Mermaid next week because I'm sorry, I'm done. I said it before. I'm done with all Disney live action remakes.
My aunt really wants to go, so
I'm sure she does. Go with her. We will be doing the finales for both Succession and Barry next Monday morning for Memorial Day before we resume the summer session. Luke, you'll be back on in 2 weeks for Across the Spider-Verse, which will be the next installment in the summer series. Like I said, our first summer season in over 4 years. This is going to be a fun one, to say the least. I'm definitely having fun with all these movies, even if they are not the best. Luke, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs?
You can follow me at Luk_Reviews on Instagram or Luk Reviews on YouTube. I have 2 videos loading. when school finishes, I will make the time to put those together for your entertainment. But otherwise, you can find me here often enough.
Exactly. Like I said, you've been on so often. You truly are part of the Talking TV family, if you will. And you can, of course, follow me with everything that I've got going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms. You should have followed the official Talking TV podcast across all platforms. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitch. This episode will be available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts tomorrow. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film. I'd watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.